Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where people truly believe that they can do whatever they want and have whatever they want because nobody else matters. And guys, strap yourselves in because today you're in for a wild ride. OP tells a tale about her sister and it's absolutely crazy. Guys, there's trespassing, false police reports, breaking into houses, one of the most entitled people that I've read about in a long time. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories today. Hit subscribe if you haven't. And as always, you can share your Karen stories to this email right here. My wife and I bought a 4-bedroom house in Pennsylvania that my son lives in. Our son went to college there and he wanted to stay in the area. So we bought a house as a second home and we live in New Jersey and commute into Manhattan for work. We figured that he would have a place to live and we could visit every so often and spend some quality time together. We pay the taxes and services and the maintenance on the house, and our son pays for groceries and the house utilities. All was going well for a few years, and our son meets a girl and they get serious. We meet her and she seems nice enough. They announce their engagement and she moves into the house with our son. Now for the problem, the wedding. We hold a little get-to-know-you barbecue at the PA house. My son and daughter are there, as are our son's fiancé and her parents and sisters. We all seem to be getting along well. My wife and daughter and the fiancé go into the house, along with her mother and sisters and my son. A few minutes later, my wife and daughter come out and they're really upset. They come over and tell me that we're leaving and driving back to New Jersey. I try to find out what happened. Once we get back and they calm down, they tell me that our son and his fiancée, along with her family, don't want us at the wedding. According to what I was told, we're not their kind of people. Hearing that, I was livid. I then called my son and asked him what the heck this was all about. He tells me that her family feels that we're not good enough and we'll embarrass them at the family wedding, and that we're all uninvited from the wedding. After hearing that, I let a week go by to calm myself down and drive back to the PA house. I find the new future in-laws are in the house, along with the fiancé. It appears that they all moved into the house. They ask me why I'm there, and I tell them that since we're not invited to the wedding, I was coming over to talk to my son. They tell me to leave their house, and that's when I lost it. I told them that they had 30 days to get out of my house and to tell my son that I'm selling the house and he could find somewhere else to live with all of you. I then go to a realtor in town and list the house for sale. They then call my son at work and tell him what I said. Apparently they thought my son owned the house. My son then called me and asked why I'm selling his house, and I tell him I paid for it, along with the taxes on it, so it's my house. I tell him that since he was living there rent-free and doesn't want us in his new life, that he has to get out. I tell him the same as I told his future in-laws, that they have 30 days to get out, or else I'll get a lawyer and get them evicted. Now, am I the a-hole for taking a hard stance on this? He is my son, but the in-laws seem to take over and we no longer count. So yeah, a lot of people are saying that OP is not the a-hole in this situation, and I don't think anyone would actually call OP the a-hole for doing this. But guys, what a slap in the face though, right? How OP's son is clearly okay with not sticking up for his own parents. And legally, the house doesn't belong to him, so it's fair game for OP to sell the house. The kid does sound like an entitled brat, to be honest, but man, guys, I have so many questions. Like, I can't fathom what the in-laws mean when they say that OP and his wife aren't their kind of people. But of course, let me know what you guys think. And with that said, brace yourselves because the next story, boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm still shaking my head. Alright, so we come from a big Italian family. My older sister and I are total polar opposites. She was a boisterous, very well endowed from a young age, very popular, very full of herself, and super self-obsessed. Naturally, that made her one of the most entitled people on this planet. She never finishes anything. She never finished school, she can't hold a job, etc., etc. Myself, I was a very small, thin, tomboyish, uncoordinated, clumsy, very shy bookworm. I didn't have many friends, and usually was wandering alone somewhere or reading. I've also had jobs since I was 13. We're both adults now, and we're both married. My sister has a son, and I'm pregnant with my first child. After giving birth, we moved back to the city that my family lives in. My older sister is having marital issues and she's getting ready to leave her husband. My husband and I have a decent-sized house that we're renting from my uncle. A friend of ours from college is also staying in one of the rooms. After a discussion, we decided to invite my sister and her son, who's almost 5 years old, to move in with us as a live-in nanny. We let her know that she would not have to pay rent or utilities and that she would need to watch my daughter whenever we needed for work. She readily agreed. My husband and I worked opposite shifts, so this was perfect for us. We moved her in right away. We had her sign a paper agreeing to the whole thing. Nothing technically legal, but just something to refer to later if needed. Now with that said, things went south pretty quickly. I'll be paraphrasing this as it was a long time ago and exact wording won't be possible, but it's pretty spot on. So firstly, let me note that my older sister had gained a substantial amount of weight, which made certain areas of her upper torso much larger than before, like double G large. So we get up one morning to make coffee and our roommate's already up. My sister comes out wearing nothing but a very baggy tank top and underwear that was much too small for her. Things were hanging out everywhere. My husband even spit his coffee out and our roommate walked in and immediately walked back out. I then told my sister to go put on some clothes and she huffed, put her hands on her hips and loudly yelled, "This is my house too, I'll dress how I want." I told her to take some pride in herself and to go put on some damn clothes. And with that she stomped off like a little kid. She got dressed and came back out. My husband asked loudly on purpose so my sister would hear, "This isn't going to be a problem with her going forward, is it?" I looked her dead in the face and said, "It better not be, right?" She looked at me, rolled her eyes and said, "Fine, but that just means that these two idiots don't know what they're missing." Referring to my husband and roommate, she's still full of herself. Fantastic. Now this has only been 2 weeks since her moving in. The next day, our roommate came to us and said that he believed my sister might have taken some money from his room. He stated that he had left a small amount of cash on his nightstand and it was gone now. His door was always closed, but it was open when he came home. My sister, unfortunately, has stolen a lot of cash from me many times when we were kids, so I knew it was probably her. I went to confront her about it, knowing full well she took it. Again, she immediately starts off by yelling as loudly as she could, "I did not steal anyone's money. You always blame me for this and you never have any proof." And that's when her son comes running around the corner with a fistful of dollars and a big smile says, "Is this the money, Mama? The money you said we could go get McDonald's with?" Hearing that, I stare at her and then at my nephew. She then walks over to him, takes the money from him, and told me that this is my money. I had this before I moved in. Now the one thing she hadn't noticed was mixed in with the US dollars was some Mexican pesos. Our roommate's family lived in Arizona. His father was a professor at the university and was of Mexican descent. They would often go south of the border to visit as they had a very large extended family. I quickly snatched the money from my sister's hand, examined the money, and when I pulled out the pesos, again I stared at her and said, "And what did you think you were gonna do with these?" With that, she slams her fist on the wall and she tells me to go F off and stomped out and slammed her door. My nephew just stood there, almost in tears. He was scared and upset. He and I had a wonderful relationship. So I sat him down and told him that everything was okay and to not worry. I told him I would bring him to McDonald's and get him the best Happy Meal ever. This brightened him up and he went skipping off. The next day, we start the work week. I gave my sister our schedules. I went over everything with her. As my daughter had been premature, there was a little bit of extra care involved. She was a few months old now, but she was still very small and she had a severe lactose allergy. It was then my sister mentioned that a friend of hers wanted to go out and party the next night. I told her that she knew she had to watch my baby. She knew several weeks ahead of time what my schedule was and she agreed to it. My sister then said, "I never get to go anywhere, and now that I'm free of that man, I want to go party. Can't you just have that guy who lives here watch her?" That's when I said to her, "That guy is our friend. He's not in town and it's not his job to watch our daughter. It's your job. You agreed to live here rent-free to watch her whenever we need it." She then rolls her eyes and said, "This is ridiculous. It's one damn night. Can't you figure something else out?" I told her if you would like to pay for a babysitter to come over, then fine. But if not, you will do as you agreed. My sister said fine. And everything went fine the first night. I came home, the baby was asleep, my sister and nephew was asleep. There was a note on the fridge from hubby, stating that all seemed good. I go to bed, and I'm woken up 3 hours later to hear several children screaming and laughing. That's when I get up, go to the living room to see that I have a house full of kids and some of my sister's friends, including that one friend that wanted to party with her, sitting on the couch in chairs. Immediately I say, "What the heck is going on?" And that's when my sister and her friends look up, and one of her friends says, "Uh-oh, here comes the party police." I grab my sister's arm and pull her to the kitchen and say, "What the F is going on here? I'm trying to sleep." And my sister replies, Well, since I can't leave, I invited my friends over to have some fun. Now at this point, I'm really irritated. I said, your friends need to leave immediately. You didn't ask if you could bring these people here, and it's a work night for us. Have some effing respect. And you know my daughter can't have a bunch of people around her. She's still too vulnerable. And that's when my sister waves her hand and replies, oh, give it a rest. She's in her crib. No one is near her. And I need my friends. I need to socialize. I haven't had fun in years. This is my house too. I told her no, it's not her house, and insisted again that her friends leave now. I reminded my sister that no matter what she thinks, this is my house. She stomps off again, and she asked everyone to leave. I get up to go to work that evening, and everything seems to be fine. My nephew bounces in, happy as always. He was thrilled with his Happy Meal toy that we got him the other day. My sister brushes past me, literally bumping my shoulder, and I stare at her again. She mumbles something under her breath and heads to the kitchen. I walk in after her, and she turns and stares at me. She then slams a jar on the counter and immediately starts to yell at me saying, I didn't know I was gonna have to watch your damn kid all the time. I wanna go do my own thing. Hearing her say that, I was shocked. I asked her at what point did she not understand that she would be a live-in nanny to watch the baby whenever we were working. She then said, that's not the damn point. I know I said that, but I didn't think you were serious. I tell her, fine, we'll talk when I get home in the morning from work, and I'll figure out where we need to go from here. I then get my things and leave for work. 2 hours later, I get a call from work, someone identifying themselves as a police officer. They're asking me to come home due to an incident at the house. I arrive home about 30 minutes later, and that's when I see 3 police cruisers with their lights on and several officers milling around my home. My older sister is standing next to an officer. She was talking, and my roommate, who appears to have just come back from out of town, was talking to another officer. My husband is also now arriving home from school, and that's when a police sergeant walks up to me. He asked what my name was, and I let him know who I am. He then asked me to follow him over to where my sister was, and while following the officer, I noticed a few dozen yards away the friend my sister wanted to go partying with, parked in her car, watching. The officer directs me to where my sister is, and I wander over, and immediately my sister starts yelling at me saying, how could you do that? How could you leave her alone like that? What is wrong with you? I stand frozen, not understanding the situation yet. The officer looks at me and asks me where I've been. I tell him I was at work, and the next part had me furious. The officer then asked if I make it a habit to leave my infant alone at home while working, and that I'm in pretty big trouble. It finally dawns on me what's going on. I tell the officer, absolutely not. I never leave my infant at home alone. My sister here was hired to be our live-in nanny, and she was supposed to be watching her tonight. She watched her last night as well. She has the schedule in detail, and we've discussed everything at length. And that's when my sister immediately shouts, that's a lie. I had no idea you were going to work. I was leaving with my friend to go out for the night when I heard the baby cry, and I had no idea you left her here. Our roommate and my husband join us. My roommate says that he came home to find my sister on the phone with police, saying that I had abandoned the baby. My sister's friend was also in the house telling her to hurry up so they wouldn't miss the drink specials at the local bar. My husband goes in the house with an officer, shows him the work schedule on the fridge, my sister's room, and the baby's crib in her room. He then shows him the paper that we had her sign with the agreed to info. Another officer goes to the car parked down the street and tells the friend to come over. The officer starts questioning the friend about the phone call, and my sister starts yelling, she has nothing to do with this. She was here to pick me up when we both heard the baby crying. I tell the officer that this is on par for the chorus with my sister. She made all of this up. My sister again starts screaming at the top of her lungs, this is all a lie. I don't know what she's telling you, but this is a damn lie. I had no idea the baby was here alone. It was at this point my sister starts to fake cry. And just as things seem ridiculous enough, my nephew is brought out crying. He tells the officer holding him, Mommy said it was okay to leave the baby, that Auntie would be home soon and that she was going out. Hearing my nephew say that, I start to laugh. I almost bent over laughing as my sister reaches for her son saying, he doesn't know what he's saying. He's a kid. That's when my nephew said, you said lying is bad. You said we were going to go play. Now that was awesome. The look on her face and the officers' faces was priceless. My sister had fabricated this ridiculous story and then called police, all so she didn't have to watch the kids and could go out drinking. The officers were pissed now too, realizing the situation. I told the officers that I wanted my sister off my property, that she was not on the lease. They escort her in the house, had her pack up a few belongings that she came with, which wasn't much, just clothes, hygiene stuff, and a few personal knickknacks. I then walk up to my sister with the signed agreement, tore it in half, and then handed it to her. I told her that she was never welcome back and that I wanted nothing to do with her ever again, that she could go with her friend. She was then escorted off the lawn. I told the officers that I don't want to press any charges since she's my sister. She had no money and nowhere to go other than her friend, and that was more than enough. The police eventually leave. My roommate, husband, and I go sit in the living room staring at each other. We had no words. We just sit for a while. We thought that was that, but of course it wasn't. The next day, my husband's at work, my roommate's sleeping in. I take the baby to go to a doctor's appointment and the grocery store, then to stop at my dad's place for a brief visit. I leave a note in the fridge letting my roommate know where I was. Just as I arrive at my dad's, he jogs down the driveway and says, "Hey, you'd better go home, your roommate just called me." It takes me about 15 minutes to get home, and standing in the front of my door is my sister, screaming at the top of her lungs, with 2 police officers on either side of her. I drive up and get out of my car, and that's when my sister rushes at me screaming obscenities in Italian at me. We didn't learn much Italian growing up, but we can cuss like truckers in it. The officers stop her. That's when my roommate comes around from the backyard, having come out of the back door instead of the front, where my sister was. I ask, what the heck is going on? And at this point, my neighbors are coming out to see what's happening. My roommate had called the police because my sister came back and tried to kick in the door. She said that we had all of her electronic equipment in there and that this was her house and we illegally removed her. When we wouldn't let her in, she began kicking and pounding on the door and screaming at the top of her lungs. My husband had a very nice stereo setup, with a multi-disc CD player, speakers, subwoofer, tuner, several dozen CDs, etc. at the time. We also had a new large TV with several video game consoles, along with VHS players and a bookshelf full of movies and video games. And my sister was attempting to break into the house and steal all of it. My sister was unhinged at this point. She was so enraged that spit was flying from her mouth when she was screaming. She screamed at me saying, "How dare you do this to me? These are all my things and you stole everything from me. You stole my house, you stole my things, you're a liar and a thief, turning the police on me. I will get you for this. I'm gonna have you evicted. I'm calling Dad. He'll have his brother kick you out and you'll be on the street. On the street." The police then ask us if she's on the lease. We tell them no, and we give them the report from last night. The officer looks at the report, nods and says, "Oh, this is the place. Yeah, we heard about this. Is this the same lady that called in the false police report last night?" I tell him yes, the same person. The officer then asked if I would like to trespass her, and I told him absolutely. He then turns to her while his partner takes out some papers and starts writing. He gives her the spiel regarding the trespass order. The officer looks at me and I walk over and quietly say, "Hey, you see that car parked 2 houses down? Yeah, that one. Can you issue the driver a trespass order too?" This is the other person from last night. The officer walks over to the car. They tell my sister if they have one more incident with her that she'll be under arrest. She then stomps off down the street to her friend's car, literally screaming at the top of her lungs every obscenity you can imagine in English and Italian. We thank the officers and they take off. I talk to my neighbors and apologize for the trouble, and most of my neighbors are elderly and very understanding. A retired Navy officer next door says that he'll be happy to keep an eye out on the house for us when we're not home. I thank him profusely. He then pats his truck and says, "Your sister is a nut." I agreed. I then head to my dad's place to visit and go over the last 2 days' events. While baby's inside sleeping, my dad and I go to the garage and do some work on the project car of his. Being the only kid of his who knows how to work on cars, this is our thing. We bust a few knuckles, have a couple of drinks, and talk for a while. A couple of hours later, we hear a car screech to a stop in front of his house. He's got a very long dirt driveway, so the car was still on pavement. And out jumps my sister, red-faced and fuming mad. She immediately stomps down the driveway with her fist balled up. My dad and I are sitting on the edge of the car near the engine with the hood up staring at her. She starts screaming and says, "Dad, did she tell you that she kicked me and your grandson out on the street? Did she tell you she lied to police about abandoning her daughter? Did she tell you she called the police on me when I tried to get the things she stole from me? I'm the victim here, not her. I want her evicted from Uncle's house. I want you to call him right now and have her kicked out. She has no right to do this to me. No right to be there." My dad looks at me and I shrug. She stops about 30 feet in front of us, and she literally starts jumping up and down screaming, "I want her kicked out, Dad. I want her kicked out now. Now." Seeing a 25-year-old woman jumping up and down and screaming like a 2-year-old was quite the sight. My dad then looks at her. Now, a little bit about my dad is my dad can look at you and he'll make your bones freeze. The look of death. My sister stops and he says, "No." That's it. That's all he said. Just no. He then turns around and starts working on the car again, and I smirked at my sister. Enraged, she starts screaming obscenities at me again. That's when Dad slowly turns around, takes 2 steps toward her, and in a deep, loud voice says, "Enough. You will not behave this way. You will not talk to your sister until you can be civil. Now get out of here." One thing about my dad is you do not disobey him, ever. My sister, still red-faced, turns around and walks off to the car and gets in. Her friend revs the engine of her very beat-up sedan, screams "F you both," and takes off. My dad turns around and says, "Well, how about some pizza?" He then takes out another drink and goes back to working on the engine. I haven't spoken to my sister since, and my daughter is now 27 years old. Holy crap, guys, talk about mega entitlement, right? Like, OP's sister truly lives in her own little fantasy world and believes she can do no wrong and that she's always the victim. Like, when I was shared this post on Reddit, my jaw literally dropped, guys. Just when you think it can't possibly get worse, it does. 27 years, though, of no contact with her sister. Wowza. Hey, you don't need those people in your life anyway, right? Just unnecessary headaches and drama. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. OP's neighbor won't stop calling 911 on him for being outside, and he gets some petty revenge on her. It's so funny, guys, so if you missed it, go check it out. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.